All right, good evening, everybody. It's still a little bit light out. It's after sundown already, but I figured I'll try with the video. This morning when I was making the video, I had a phone call I had to answer. And this video, I just want to finish the idea that I started this morning about why I think the Republican Party has to make a special outreach effort to American Muslims. Now, obviously, you're not going to get everybody, but just that doesn't stop us from having a Republican Jewish coalition. Even though I don't agree with everything the Republican Jewish coalition has to say, and I'm a Republican and I'm Jewish. Although I do feel that the Republican Jewish coalition is a little bit too Zionist for my tastes, but I understand the need for pro-Israel politicians in America. I just don't want it to have anything to do with being Jewish. To me, American politicians should be pro-Israel because it's in America's interest, not just to try to get Jewish votes. But because Israel is a valuable ally for America, and it happens to be a place where a lot of Jewish people live, and it also happens to be, in a place that's holy to the Jewish religion. Doesn't mean that the government is holy or anything like that. But then again, what does holiness mean? That's the big question. The idea of the Holy Land, we've discussed before, is basically that there are certain laws that apply there that don't apply anywhere else, and that's really all there is to it. It's a Mishnah, Caleb, and that's it. And people, make it into something that it's not. That's not to say that being said, we still have some classical devotions to the Holy Land that go above and beyond that, and there is a certain concept of love for the Holy Land. But what the holiness of the land is specifically a legalistic issue. But that's neither here nor there. Now the question is, as I said in the first video today, the natural place for all quote-unquote minorities is the Republican Party. Although really the most important minority is the minority of one, is the individual, and not pigeonholing us into these different groups. That was certainly, we're coming up to Martin Luther King Day, and I came across in a book by Karen Armstrong what Martin Luther King spoke about, the sense of somebodyness. And so I looked it up on Google today, the sense of somebodyness, and I listened to Dr. King talking about the sense of somebodyness and other things that he spoke about. Like another thing that he said is that you shouldn't, and you can put in any identity politics group in this category, but I'm not going to use the word that he used, even though there's nothing wrong with the word that he used, but I don't want to get in trouble because people are crazy and get upset about using words that there's nothing wrong with. But he's, essentially said, you shouldn't strive to just be a good African-American plumber, African-American police officer, African-American teacher. He said, if that's your sense of where you're coming from, then you've already failed your matriculation exam to enter into, I forgot what he said, the University of Life or something like that. I don't remember what he said, but he said you should just see yourself and try to be a good plumber or a good teacher or a good police officer, And he said, wherever God sends you, you gotta, if God wants you to be a street sweeper, well, you should sweep streets like Picasso. Who did he say? Like Michelangelo painted pictures. You should sweep streets like how Beethoven wrote music. You should sweep streets like how Shakespeare wrote poetry. You should, and when you leave this world, all of the hosts of heaven and earth should declare, "Here lies the best darn street sweeper there ever lived." Something along. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but and that was Dr. King's vision. It wasn't this identity politics of us versus them. It was we're all together in this, and yes, we are different and we are individuals, but it's about that sense of somebodiness. And as soon as somebody tells you you're a nobody, that's the worst thing. He's like, if you want to be a mature adult in the world, you need to understand that you are somebody, and you have to have that sense of somebodiness. That's really beautiful idea, and and Dr. King was a Republican, and that's really should be the motto of the Republican Party, is that sense of somebodiness. You're not just another cog in this big machine. You are somebody, you are valuable, you're an individual, and you matter. And that's what republicanism is about, is protecting the minority from the tyranny of the majority, the tyranny of democracy. And that's why America is not a democracy, it is a republic. And that's the ideals of the Republican Party. And I understand every religion has this idea of community, and that's an important part of religion. Quite often our religions are identified by our community. We speak of the Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, of the peoplehood of the Jews. The church speaks, Christians speak of themselves as the church, or as the body of Christ. The Muslim community speaks of themselves as the Ummah, and also have the same idea that they are all one body, just as Jews see themselves as all one body, Christians see themselves as all one body, Muslims see themselves as all one body, and that's beautiful and fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a separation of politics and religion, and there's something about America where, and again, the political parties also can see themselves as one party. But we are composed of individuals, and the individual liberty and the individual dignity of every human being being made in the image of God is important here. But I specifically wanted to speak about why I believe it would be natural for Muslims in America to be Republicans. I mean, my experience, I work in chaplaincy with a wide variety of faiths. And I remember at another institution where I serve part-time, in addition to my full-time job, it was the day after Election Day, and we were sitting down. We have 4 chaplains there, and we were, including myself, and we all sat down on the day after Election Day in 2016 to discuss a Thanksgiving interfaith service that we were planning. And so we had our meeting, and it's probably one of the few times in the year that all 4 chaplains meet together. And of the 4 chaplains, I'm the only one who was natural-born American. All the rest are immigrants. And the Protestant pastor, who's pretty much the head chaplain there, he's the only full-time chaplain there. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know exactly what's going on. He asked me, and he's African American, He's Haitian or Jamaican. I'm sorry that I don't know where he's from, but he wasn't born here. He immigrated to America, and he asked me, "Are you happy about the election yesterday? The outcome of the election?" And I was like, "Well, I'm certainly happy that the person who lost, because I wanted her to lose." And so he said, "Well, I'm happy that Trump won." And then our what's it called? What's free there? It just says free. Our Catholic priest, who I believe is from Russia. He's Catholic. He's not Orthodox, but I'm pretty sure he's from Russia, or somewhere in the Eastern Bloc. He also said, yeah, he voted for Trump. And then the Imam, who's from Bangladesh, he also said, yeah, I also voted for Trump. And I was like, well, yeah, so did I. I was like, after, like, I could feel comfortable and not be like scared. Oh my goodness, what are they going to think of me? They're going to think I'm some kind of Nazi because I voted for Donald Trump, And I'm glad that was a safe space for me, that I didn't have to hide who I voted for. So, I was like, wow, even the Imam voted for Donald Trump, and I guess he's not upset about this Muslim ban. And, well, Bangladesh is not one of the countries that's on the list, right? And I spoke to another Imam who I work with, and he said, he didn't vote in this past, he just became a citizen. He's from Turkey. He didn't vote in this past election. And he said he's, trying to get a sense of American politics before he starts voting. And he said he would like to be a Republican. It's what makes the most sense to him as a Muslim. He's a pretty moderate, what people would call a moderate Muslim, but I after listening to, I don't remember, well, maybe it was something on PragerU or something, I prefer the term to call him a traditional Muslim, as opposed to a radical Muslim. It's not question of fundamentalist versus moderate as much as traditional versus radical. And I've heard this for a long time, and it didn't make sense to me, but it's really kind of coming together. Radical Islam is linked, it has been for a long time. I remember hearing about this in the 90s, I believe, when I was still in high school, is what I'm kind of remembering. Something maybe on the 700 Club or something. The link between radical Islam and Marxism. And when you see groups like CARE, people like Linda Sarsour and so forth, it comes out very clear that the radicalism of radical Islam is not a religious radicalism as much as it's a political radicalism. It's not, I read today an article that someone who I had the honor of meeting once, Rabbi Bart Sadok from koshertorah.com, he just got married this week, is what I heard. Mazel tov to him. And I'm a big fan of his. Don't agree with everything he has to say. He doesn't expect me to. I don't expect him to agree with everything I have to say. But Rabbi Bart Sadok wrote an article about the cure for radical Islam is Islam. And if Islam would return to something that it really used to be, it would have the potential to become the largest religion in the world, is what Rabbi Bart Sadok said. I certainly wish that Jews would be more proactive in outreach and not be so ethnocentric. You know, I mean, I was reading about, I was listening to someone on YouTube, I don't remember his name, and he was talking about why, you know, when he was getting into religion, and then, you know, a guy like maybe a little younger than me, making YouTube videos, maybe, I don't know if he's as full of himself as I am, or a little bit more, but, you know, talking about how he chose Catholicism, and why he didn't choose Eastern Orthodoxy, and his issue with the Eastern Orthodox is the ethnocentricity of Eastern Orthodoxy. And with that being said, this guy, he lives in Canada. Maybe he just sounds arrogant because he's Canadian, and it's just I'm not used to that accent, you know. I think Jordan Peterson also kind of sounds pretty arrogant, you know, but I like what he has to say most of the time, not all the time, but, you know, he's actually Eastern Orthodox, I believe. But I don't know if they have this in Canada like they have in America. But in America, there is, I mean, I have a coworker who's an Eastern Orthodox priest, and, you know, people call him Russian Orthodox. He's actually from Poland. But he said, you know, the church he belongs to, I mean, after I did research into it and everything, you know, who he recognizes as his metropolitan and so forth, it's called the OCA, the Orthodox Church of America, and it's a pan-Orthodox church. It's not specific to the Greeks or the Russians or the Byzantines or this and that. And, you know, when friends of mine like Usher Meza talk about, you know, opening up Judaism to welcoming converts more and so forth, and, you know, and we're not even missionizing, we're not even like saying you have to convert to Judaism or else you're going to burn in hell. That's not what we say, but, you know, we want to be welcoming to converts, and the more racist element in the Jewish community is really upset at him. And then they say, well, it's not about that, it's about his views on Kabbalah and stuff. And I disagree with his views on Kabbalah, but you know, I can still be friends with him, you know. And again, it's really not my job to boss around Muslims or anything, or give them advice or whatever, but like, one thing, I've encountered a lot of Muslims who I've interacted with over years, including my friend the Imam at my friend the Turkish Imam here at the institution where I work full-time, is that the Jewish community is a perfect role model for Muslims. How to maintain your identity, be who you are, but be fully American, without giving up your religion, without giving up your culture, but still being fully part of the American story. And I feel, you know, as, you know, that could be part of our being a light unto the nations in a certain sense. You know, that's like there's a story in the Buddhist tradition, the Dalai Lama. He asked a group of rabbis to join him in Nepal to discuss how to survive in exile and the secrets of survival in exile, to learn this wisdom from the Jews. And we should be, you know, and it's the same with the Catholics. I mean, America was essentially a Protestant country in its founding, and it's still in its basis. I don't have a problem with that, with saying that it, you know, that Catholics and Jews and Muslims can live in America as well as we do because it's a Protestant Christian country, not just a Christian country, but specifically a Protestant country. And that we benefit from that. We in the minority religions. But, Catholicism has, of course, grown in America. But again, it depends where in America you're dealing with. And so, you do have these different, certainly in the bigger cities, Catholicism is very widespread. I think it's a beautiful ministry that we can do as Jews to help immigrant groups learn how to be yourself and be American, especially religious minorities, how to be who you are without losing who you are in America, and there are many ways that Jews do that in America, and there are many ways that Jews lose who they are in America, and that's fine. That's part of I think one of the things that every group, including the Jews, have to learn is, not to freak out too much over the collateral damage. I know one Hasidic Rebbe who I'm friendly with. I haven't spoken to him in a little while, though. He lives in Yerushalayim. He taught me a song, and he said that there's a tradition from the Rebbe Bunim from Pshischa. I once made a pilgrimage to his grave in Poland, very famous Hasidic Rebbe, who was also a very worldly man and also had different ideas in theology that were radically different than most people would assume from a mystic, from a Hasidic master. And that's one of the reasons why the Polish Hasidic ideology is somewhat different than you would see in Russia, and what you see in Galicia, which is part of Poland, a little different, and and what I consider to be my tradition, the Hungarian tradition, is somewhat different than all of those in a certain way, but also I always say that the Hungarian tradition is not particularly Hasidic, but it's rather holistic in its approach to Torah Judaism, to ultra-Orthodoxy. But you have elements in the Hungarian tradition of the Sephardic tradition, the classical Ashkenazic German tradition, the Hasidic tradition, even some influence from the Lithuanian traditions. It's a very holistic approach that doesn't discount the way that, say, in the Russian traditions, they are very set in their ways that it's my way or the highway. And people tend to think that about the Hungarians, but when you actually get to know them, although they are very traditionalist and very old-fashioned, but they're also set in their ways of being open-minded, meaning part of their ideology is to laugh at those who become too fundamentalist in things that are not that important, and that the main focus of most of the Hungarian approaches is specifically to be true to just what we're basically obligated to do as Jews, while holding on to certain traditions that might not be as important, but holding on to them nonetheless, so that they'll have the traditional language and garb and be very strict about a lot of issues with kosher, but in a sense that, well, this is the law. As usually, not always, there are certain things that they still do, especially Passover is the big example in the Hungarian tradition of just holding on to traditions. Even that, a lot of things became, well, this is what the Rebbeisha people do, and not everybody does. Meaning, like, today in Satmar, most people will use kosher for Passover vegetable oils, whereas even 40 years ago that would have been unheard of, and now it's pretty commonplace to use, to not insist on only cooking with schmaltz, although you might still bring out the schmaltz just because it's geschmack, like the one big example I can think of is like not eating garlic on Pesach, which the Satmar Rebbe admits that there's absolutely no reason for it, but he still did it, and that was one of the few things that he did that he admitted that there's no reason for it, and in many things he would often be very open-minded to the point where other people would find it to be radical. The radical open-mindedness. After the Satmar Rebbe came back from Eretz Yisrael, from his first trip to Eretz Yisrael, he tried to institute Birkas Kohanim whenever he could, on days that were not traditional, that by his father, his grandfather, they did not have duchening, the priestly blessing, which generally, in the Sephardic tradition and in most places in the Holy Land, it's done every day. But in the classical Ashkenazic tradition outside of the Holy Land, it's something that's reserved for holidays. And so the Satmar Rebbe started to have, which is a little bit more common on Shabbos Chol HaMoed, to have duchening, and then the probably the most radical one is on Hoshana Rabbah. And I tried to, we didn't have Kohanim in our shul over Yontiv on Sukkot. I think maybe the last days we did, but so on Hoshana Rabbah we had a Kohen, and I asked him if he wants duchen. He's like, no, you don't duchen on Hoshana Rabbah. I said, well, the Satmar Rebbe we did. He says, what did I care? Somebody in Williamsburg, some guy in Williamsburg wanted to duchen on Hoshana Rabbah. Why should I do that? So even though the Rav said if he wants to do it, he doesn't have a problem. I mean, I remember one time we had a minyan, which was me and the Rav and 8 Sfardim, and we had a Kohen. They wanted to duchen, and the Rav said, "Yeah, we wouldn't have a minyan without the Sfardim. It's a Sfardi minyan now, so we could duchen." But that's just I've gotten so off course of what I want to talk about. I don't think I even really spoke at all about what I want to talk about, which is about why it should be natural for Muslims to be Republicans, and it's for the same reason why it should be natural for Orthodox Jews to be Republicans, which it pretty much is. Most Orthodox Jews are Republicans. So, although certain aspects of generally the modern Orthodox, you have some more liberal and some more conservative, and then among the ultra Orthodox you have certain community leaders or self-styled lay leaders who will push Democrats because they feel it's in their interest. And I think that's really what I want to talk about in my next video, although I think I'm going to have to stop this video here, go back to my first subject, which was Islam, and from there go to the Jews, and why a lot of the things we're suffering at now is probably a result of us supporting the Democrats. I really should be learning, though. I don't know if I want to make another video now, because I'm behind on my learning for the day. I was very busy at work. I didn't really do any Gemara at all today except the Chok Yisrael. and I usually do at least 2.5 blot. One half, one amud in one masechta and 2 blot in another masechta. So I'm gonna have to figure out when I'm gonna. Plus, I still have to do my translation for the Kal Haredi. But I really want to get this message out. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's already a half hour. It's too long as is. Nobody's gonna watch this. I don't mean nobody. Everybody who watches this should have a sense of somebodyness. If you made it this far, write somebodyness in the comments below so I know that you made it this far. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe and comment.